Hey Hamish, it's so great to have you here. Thank you very much for joining me for a quick chat today. I'm really keen to first and foremost dive into your journey and to learn a little bit more about what you do at Chandler Livestock and maybe a little bit of background context with your career today. Could you start by telling us a little bit about your business and what you've been up to lately?
Yeah, okay. I guess my wife Leanne and I have been uh, in business together since 1998, so a long while, but we've been developing sheep enterprises since uh, around 2000, and over the last few years have been transitioning more and more to ram breeding stud enterprises. Um, I had been breeding merino rams for the last 12, 13 years, but for a long time that was just for our own use because of my off farm work with Sheep Genetics and Meat and Livestock Australia at the time. Was probably best not to go and try marketing rams in competition to Sheep Genetics clients and that sort of thing. So we have been breeding rams for quite some time, but have only sort of registered studs and gone, I guess public with that and started looking at how do we try selling rams in the last 18 months or so. And in that time have also added a white Suffolk stud to the mix. So yeah, been a bit of a change of strategy over the last couple of years. So still working off farm part time, which brings some complexities time management wise, obviously, but running between 200 250 ewes in the Merino stud and also in a white Suffolk stud, plus commercial sheep enterprises on top of that.
Yeah, super busy. So I'd love to know a little bit more around the mission of your breeding objectives. What sort of drives you? What's your mission when it comes to your genetics business?
Yeah, I guess originally we started breeding merino rams for ourselves because we couldn't really find what we were looking for. Um, the local studs were doing a great job of breeding sheep that suited the environment, suited where we are in the northern tablelands in New South Wales. But we were looking for higher performance and to bring higher performance in from outside of the district where the studs we could identify that had the sort of performance levels we were looking for didn't necessarily suit the summer rainfall patterns and that sort of thing up here and the worm burdens that you get in the New England. So I guess that was originally our driver for why we started breeding our own rams, because we were trying to bring those two things together, the sort of performance levels we were looking for with the type of sheep that suited this environment. And yeah, so it's been a long journey. It's been an educational experience all round, I think, trying to bring those two things together. But for the merinos, we're really looking to breed, really quite resilient sheep that can perform under some pretty tough conditions because we run some steep country that's not so easy to manage. So really looking for resilient sheep that can put up with a worm burden, can put up with limited management, but pretty productive at the same time. Reasonably good fleece weights of 17 micron wools, but a good carcass, a good growth rates, ability to maintain condition, really good fertility rates are important to us, and really good worm resistance traits. So, trying to breed a sheep that doesn't take too much work to look after, but's really productive, is ultimately going to hit what the market is looking for, we hope, in terms of there's a surplus sheep to sell and a good dollar value per head when it comes to fleece weights. Then the white Suffolk enterprise was added on because I think the sort of sheep we're breeding in the merinos suits either a self-replacing merino enterprise or an enterprise where some of your sheep are going to terminal size. So we thought it was quite a complementary sort of fit for us and ram buying clients. And in the White Suffolks, really looking to focus on getting live lambs on the ground that perform really well and hit market specs as well as we possibly can, particularly looking at the eating quality aspect as we go forward and that sort of thing. So I guess across the board, the common theme is animal welfare sort of emphasis when it comes to worm resistance, lamb survival, that sort of stuff. Productivity across the board, and a really close eye where we can on how do we best meet the market demands for what consumers are looking for. And just to make it a bit more complex, looking at what else might be demanded from us out of our sheep breeding enterprises over coming years.
Yeah, good points. And I'm just thinking with my marketing hat on, reflecting back to when you first kicked off, I guess, a bit more publicity around your stud and your genetics and sheep that you're breeding. What sort of were your initial frustrations or challenges that you faced or potentially still facing with communicating the benefits of your brand?
And I think that was definitely why we engaged with you right from the start. Was there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of hype coming from some quarters, and I don't know, to some extent, I probably shouldn't call it misinformation, but what people sometimes talk about as being important doesn't necessarily align with what we think are the true profit drivers for commercial sheep enterprises. And, we're really trying to align what we're breeding for with what profit drivers are in commercial enterprises. And it's a matter of how do you cut through all of the other noise that's out there so people notice what you're doing. I've come from a background where over the last 10, 15 years I couldn't really go marketing what I was doing because it was going to be a conflict of interest. So I've come from a position where unusually, I suppose, I couldn't really do any marketing for our own business, and trying to get from no marketing at all to developing a client base as quickly as we can. It was really a challenge for us. How do we get our name out there and get noticed by people, and people pick up on what we're doing and why we're doing it?
Love that. Love being able to share that story and that mission. And I think you guys are doing it quite well. I guess with these challenges in mind, what sort of, how did this affect your ability to reach your potential clients and to support people specifically?
So I guess the people we're trying to reach will already have a whole bunch of other people that are in their ear, I suppose, and potentially telling conflicting stories. And we really don't want to be negative about anything. We don't want to go knocking what other people are doing. We just simply want to say, this is the approach that we're taking. This is why we believe this is the right approach for our business. The way we're breeding sheep, we're not going to go selling sheep to someone that don't suit what we'd be doing at home ourselves. I guess our breeding objectives really built around what we think will work in our business in this environment, and more broadly address the market. So how do we, in a positive way, communicate that to people to say, this is why we're doing this. This is why we think this would be useful for you, but we want to do it in a way that's not knocking other people. It's not trying to start World War III with other stud producers, either in this district or further afield, but in a way that aligns with our values, and communicates that across to people who might think in a similar way. And I think one of the reasons that we went down that road, and what you were telling us, really struck a chord with us, was, to go marketing, it doesn't need to be all about ego or standing up in front of people saying how fantastic you are and all that sort of thing. It's just, and that was the bit that I was uncomfortable about, was the thought that, to go marketing, you've got to stand up on your soapbox and say we are the greatest. It's a matter of how can we, in a way that's authentic for how we like to talk and do business, get a message out there that tells people what we're doing and finds an audience.
Yeah, that's such great role modeling there. And I think I'm curious, like, if you aren't taking proactive steps communicating how your genetics can help improve someone's flock or performance and business, where do you think your brand would be right now if you weren't being proactive? Because I know you've done a lot of work on your own website. And yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more around how that process unfolded and the content that you've added to that site.
Yeah, it's look, it's still really early days for us in our developing the stud enterprises and marketing that and developing a client base. I think it's fair to say if we hadn't gone down this road working with you, our website probably would look like a lot of other websites. For the merinos, it'd probably be talking about long white lustrous wool and talking about our own business. Probably a lot more inward looking about what we're doing and why we think that's a good thing. But instead, it's definitely talking about why we do things and why we believe that's the right thing to do. But we've really tried focusing on, from the client's perspective, what's in it for them. So how could what we do assist those guys? And obviously with my background, I probably would have been focusing on a lot of the nuts and bolts of stuff, going, we're measuring everything we can think of and feasibly do. We're involved in putting rams into the resource flock project or whatever else we can get our hands on. We're doing all the genotyping and that sort of stuff, which you see a lot of studs talking about now, which is awesome. I think that's great, and I think that stuff's really important. But if I put myself in the shoes of someone who might be looking for rams to buy from someone like me, and they read that, it's kind of like, well, that's nice, but why? Why is that important to me? What do I want to buy a ram that's been genotyped for, or whatever it might be? Why should I care that you're running around outside in the fog at 6 o'clock in the morning tagging lambs and weighing lambs at birth and doing maternal behaviour scores? I don't know why that's important. So it's really been a matter of how do we try and talk about what we're doing in a way that we think, how does this impact on that potential client's business, I suppose.
Yeah, so that framework, the buyer's journey, with the cold, warm, hot, if that sort of something, and then the benefits and the features, a lot of people are very surface level in their communications on the features of their product, that you've really unpacked the benefits of that to the producer, and you backed that up with data as well. How did that sort of process play out for you in communicating what you've got on offer?
Yeah, well, it's still playing out. But yeah, so I guess in terms of the process that we've gone down, you're right, the website part of it was the first big step that we took. So it took probably longer than I thought it was going to, which is, you could say the same of everything that I end up doing. It always takes me longer than I thought. So the website was the first point of call, so that we've got some level of credibility and professionalism, I suppose, that people have got that real anchor and reference point to go back and look at. And, I think the feedback that we've had about the website and where it's at has actually been really good. The people who have managed to find it and access it, I think, hopefully are finding the information that they need. And we are slowly seeing traffic through that website build over time. And the next bit, obviously, is the social media bit, to start trying to get the message out more widely and direct traffic back to the website, which has been a real challenge for me. Like, first one to acknowledge that I'm a social media failure completely. My last post on our personal Facebook page was, I believe, 2009. And apologies to the friends who put in friends requests 14 years ago that I've never done anything with. So social media is definitely not my strong point, but you can, as I said, you can see traffic starting to grow organically, I suppose, through the website and tracking visits to the website. But we really need to develop some stronger networks to direct people back to that. So we've started on that process. And earlier in the year, we did get the Chandler Livestock Facebook page set up, and put the first little bits of information about what we're doing on there. I actually have to acknowledge that I'm kind of my time is already allocated.
Yeah.
I've always worked on the principle, bite off more than you can chew and chew like hell, but I'm kind of maxed out with that at the moment. So I have sort of engaged a bit of help from a friend to help kick that along and get that going. So, that's our focus over the next little while as we're coming into the next few months, as we get closer to ram selling season up where we are, is how do we start really ramping up what we're doing social media wise, and trying to get that message out more widely and direct people back through those pathways, I guess, is where we're up to with the process today.
Yeah, and I think that's such a clever way to use your time, is you're bringing members of your team who have those skill sets to support you with that. How has it been for you in terms of learning, like putting together the strategy for your marketing and sales for your stud and setting up systems, but understanding it as the business owner? I mean, you probably would prefer to focus on breeding the sheep and doing that side of things. The marketing may not have come as naturally. How's it been for you, just upskilling and learning the core sort of psychology behind marketing and sales, and the importance of having systems that are going to be automated to save you time?
Yeah, that's and I think that's the bit that we still need to develop a lot more, is how you can automate that, or how you can get leverage off other things that you've done. Because you're right, the marketing bit doesn't come naturally to me at all. And as I said before, I think the bit I like in this approach that you've helped us with is that there's much more modest ways of communicating that message and getting it out there. So that's certainly been, I think, the big change in how we think about that is how you can approach that. I think, yeah, I'd be more than happy to just be playing with a few sheep and a few dogs and focusing on that stuff. I guess anyone who knows me knows that I can talk. I'm happy to talk about the things that interest me. So I guess it's just lucky that breeding sheep and livestock genetics and that sort of stuff, is one of my main interests in life, I suppose. But it's a matter of how do we take that from verbal and put it into a form that we can get onto someone else and get people to engage with that. So that's really the tough bit for me, is how do you take the time to turn those words into something that will hold someone else's attention for long enough that they want to engage with it. So understanding how to put business information up on Facebook or whatever it might be that gets noticed by people, and you know packaging it up in something that's only going to take 30 seconds or whatever their attention span can keep going for, I guess has been the educational part of the process just lately for us, and how to develop those skills. And there has been a lot of looking at the materials that you've made available, a lot of going back and looking at how other studs who are successful in that space and have got a large share of voice for the industry in those sort of forums, and learning how other people are doing it, I guess, has been important, because to me the language that people use in social media is quite different to the language and how they frame messages in many other forms of communication. So, I think that's been probably the biggest challenge is understanding those different modes of communication, but still, how do we pull something together that sounds like us?
Yes. Yep, that's authentic for you guys, your brand and your voice. I think that's honestly every marketer's challenge is creating engaging content. And I know as business owners, we wear many different hats. And I think when I talk about, potentially a lot of people not feeling like they're comfortable or are natural at marketing and communicating their brand and product, it could just be because we are looking over the fence and comparing ourselves with what other people are doing. And yeah, so I think that's the power in remaining authentic in your voice, and that's probably a passion of mine to support people to really unpack those all of those amazing things that's in our head, and it's that ability to then communicate it into meaningful language across various platforms to your targeted audience. I think that's just such an important aspect of the marketing side of things, for sure. One of many important side of things. One last question, Hamish. I would love to hear from you. So you've started essentially from scratch with your marketing, even though you've been breeding sheep for a long time. Anyone out there listening, what sort of steps would you recommend that they might take, or what sort of common pitfalls should they be aware of? What advice would you give to people just starting out, I suppose?
Yeah, I think we probably it's been a bit of a mixed blessing for us. Yeah, we were starting from scratch. There was no marketing, full stop. Pretty much not a client base, because we're at the starting point, and so we had a challenge. How do we get started on this? What should this look like? But we also had I guess, a greenfield site that you can build this to look whatever way you like. So I think that worked in our favour and allowed us to go looking around at how should this be done, who's doing a good job of it, um, who's doing something that when you see their marketing, you go, yeah, that's nice, thanks, mate. That's a bit of a fig jam session and not much else, versus, yeah, I like that. If you start thinking about the content of, well, sorry, not so much the content, but how they're doing it, how they're conveying a message, and do I want to engage with that? To me, I think that was a bit of an interesting process. But yeah, go and actually find out a little bit about how could you build this as an overall program of work. I guess what's the overall strategy look like? Who can help you build that effectively? Because we can't be experts in everything. And then how do you start resourcing it and pulling the different parts together? And we're all busy. We've all got a million other things to do, and let's face it, we probably do the bits that we're interested in first. So how do you turn that idea into a process that you can step by step work through and know what comes next, what are the pieces we need to develop? And I think that's the bit that I found really useful out of this process. But I guess from from my off-farm work as well, the people who are, the breeds that I'm dealing with now, the people who are successful, running successful businesses, rather than just hobbies in that space, are the people who are actually actively out there developing a client network and sharing information with them, and not just engaging with them the week before their sale, um, but they're following up with them throughout the year to say, how did they go? How are the progeny performing? What else could we be thinking about? So it's actually developing a customer service um, model or ethic or whatever you want to call it. How do we actually build a client base, look after those guys, and keep coming back to them to say, you know, we think you should be using our genetics for these reasons, but then checking in with them and saying, so how's that actually working out? Is there anything else that, as a partnership, we should be doing better? Um, and I think there's too many people who think someone else should do the marketing for them. Whether it's the breed association or another group that you're a part of, or whatever. A breed association, for example, can do some generic marketing for that breed as a whole. How do we grow market share for the whole breed? But they can't do the marketing for an individual stud and promote that stud against others. So you actually have to take ownership of the marketing for your business, and I guess treat it as a part of the business rather than just a optional extra. So but that's how I see it. But as I said, it's early days for us. We've still got to actually finish executing on that plan to get it all in place, and then make sure that we've got a rolling process in place every year to keep following up on it and keep reinforcing the messages and continuing the process.
Absolutely. I feel like we are our own, well, when we're business owners, we know our business better than anyone else. So potentially having a really good grasp on your clientele base, the client experience, like you just mentioned, yeah, fantastic to be able to follow up with that communication. I love hearing when brands say it's more than just selling rams and bulls. It's about building that relationship and that experience, that customer service. So yeah, I think that's a really good point you made. One quick question, Hamish, because I feel like you're probably the best person to actually answer this. I get asked a lot by a lot of studs who are recording and measuring EBVs or ASPVs. Whose sort of responsibility in the industry is it to educate? Is it a balance across everyone around how to, record and select on traits and data, and how do we understand what all these numbers mean? Like, whose responsibility is it, the stud, to really step
Yeah.
up into that space as an opportunity? Like, could we be doing a better job? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a lot like the marketing example I was just talking about, where I said, a breed association can do some generic marketing to try and grow breed market share for that breed, and then it's up to the stud themselves to really market their product and why should you come to me. I think that breeding values are probably really very similar to that, in that um, you know MLA with their sheep genetics team, the guys who deliver on breed plan, the adoption team at MLA, the various departments of ag or primary industries, they all have a role to play in how do we get people to understand why breeding values are important, how you go about using them. But those guys aren't there to say this is exactly what you should be doing as a commercial ram buyer or a commercial bull buyer. They're not there to go, this is exactly what you should be looking for with the traits that you want to improve in your business. So I think that's where it's really important for the bull breeder or ram breeder to actually have an understanding of what this stuff means, what it means for their clients' businesses, and how do they help improve understanding on that front. Because again, I guess from observation over probably too long, it's more than 20 years in that space, the studs that have been really effective in not just generating genetic progress using breeding values, but growing a client base around, what they're doing, are the ones who've been talking to their clients about it, taking them along for the journey and improving their understanding at the same time. So, you know, I think studs should be talking about, this is my breeding objective, this is how I think it helps you, but this is how the breeding values we're putting so much effort into developing are going to help you get there and why they're important. So I guess the risk there is that from a broader industry perspective, that there's so many different perspectives about what's important that might be seen as fragmenting the message to some extent. But I think that's where it's important to have that common industry sort of extension and adoption programs that are saying this is the core of how this stuff works and why. It's important for you to understand how that influences your profitability. And then you've got the studs going, and this is what we're producing. This is how we think this helps your breeding program and your business, and does the fine tuning around the edges of that. So I
Yeah,
guess,
I love.
from our perspective, with where we're going, things like reproduction, worm resistance, that sort of stuff. Some of those things are probably really, really important with where we are, the environments we're operating in. Maybe they're not so important to other people in other districts. So if we want our clients to understand how to use those bits in particular, I think we've got to play a real role in improving their understanding.
Yeah, great feedback. I think, yeah, you're on the money with that, and hoping that, yeah, you build enough trust. I mean, there's those three factors that I always talk about: is trusting the product is going to help you fit your needs and what you're after and objectives, and then trusting the seller and the company and the values they stand by, and a lot of, values in terms of ethics and honesty and trust comes into play. So yeah, I think that's so important, and thank you so much for sharing with us your story and your wisdom today. Is there anything else that you wanted to share or dive into? But I keep on asking you question after question, even though I promised that was the last one. But yeah, always a pleasure to chat.
No, I don't think there's anything that really needs to be said and that we haven't already. But I think all of these things are a bit the same. Go and find out. Go and ask people who can help improve your understanding and how you could approach something. You know, if you go back far enough, we started in sheep, 25 years ago or something in our own business without that much exposure to the sheep industry. A few years elsewhere, but not much. So we actually had to go and ask people, what do they do and why? And I asked pretty much anyone who'd stand still long enough about running sheep in the New England, and I think I probably got at least as many different responses as people that I asked, maybe more different responses than people. So, I think go and ask, go and find out. You don't have to agree with all the responses you get, but go and find people who can help you with those decisions and improve your understanding. Go and ask enough questions that you can find someone whose views and approach aligns with what you're comfortable with, and just plan it out that way and get started. I think.
Great feedback. Thank you so much, Hamish. Really grateful for you taking the time and, yeah, sharing a lot of insights with us. So appreciate that. Have a lovely rest of your day.
No problem. Thank you.